All right, folks, we are live from our glorious studios in a very cold warehouse in Colorado. We have our reoccurring guru, Joe Brady, in with us today. Joe, thank you for coming in today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Constantine.
Joe, part of the time that we're in right now, we just got through Thanksgiving, and then we have the whole month of December coming up with a bunch of holidays. Some of the questions that we've been getting from our patients after listening to you speak and your podcasts, and even some of us here are wondering, what are the best practices of staying stress-free during the holidays?
First I'd rearrange your question a little bit. There's no such thing as stress-free. Life is stressful. So even if you take like one-celled animals, parameciums, and put them in a stress-free environment with exactly the right amount of food and exactly the right temperature, they atrophy and die very quickly. So it's not a question of being stress-free, and especially over the holidays, there's no way that you're going to go through the holidays without stress. Even if you try to completely ignore it, just the Christmas carols over the speaker at Walgreens is going to be stressful. And so it's more a question of how you manage your stress. And it's interesting because one of the biggest lines of research right now in the research community is on this whole idea of mindfulness meditation, and particularly because of its effects on stress. Constantine, you and I were talking a little bit before we started here, and there's some good research going on in Japan where they're looking at first trying to show that a meditative state of mind is a distinct state of mind compared to other states of mind, and also trying to prove that it's superior. And so they can use functional MRIs and they can show that there's a real qualitative difference and quantitative difference in what's going on with your brain when you meditate. The whole thing lights up basically like a Christmas tree. But more importantly is what effect it has on stress management, maybe be a better way to express it. But what they do is they'll take ordinary people and put them in a room, and experienced meditators and put them in another room and have them both meditate, both for the inexperienced ones and the experienced ones, and at some point do something stressful, like drop snakes on them. And they found that when you take an ordinary person and you drop snakes on them suddenly, they get really upset. And they want to know who's the management here. They want to call their lawyer and knocking on the door and but they found that they get upset and they stay upset. You can't prevent stressful things from happening in the modern world, but you don't have to hang on to it. When they did the experienced meditators, people that were used to meditating or had some level of skill about it, what they found is you can drop snakes on them and they do get upset, but it only lasts a few seconds before they look over and realize, oh, that's a rubber snake. Who are you trying to fool? And go back to their meditation. They even did one study where one of the experienced meditators, this was at Harvard, was actually the Dalai Lama. And they asked him, you're so experienced meditating and keeping your cool and keeping calm, cool, and collected in a stressful world. Do you ever get upset? And he laughed and he said, that's absurd. Of course I get upset. The difference is how long you stay there. When you're the type of person that you're not very experienced with dealing with stress, and then something stressful happens, we tend to be upset about it all day long, rather than for those few minutes that you have to deal with it. In which case, meditation, and by meditation, what scientists mean is a very broad definition of meditation. Anything that gets you to turn off that little voice in your head and stop thinking about your troubles, technically is a meditation. Human beings are unique and we have the ability to sit around and think about our troubles all day. In which case, if that's all you do all day long is think about your troubles, then very quickly your life turns into an endless series of one damn thing after another, after another, after another. The trick is to turn that off for a period of time and give the brain a chance to reboot. And that's what meditation does. And when scientists look at meditation, a good example is my wife and I have a friend of ours that spent 30 years of his life in a mental institution down here at Fort Logan Mental Hospital. Spent 30 years of his life in a mental hospital. As a therapist, not as a patient. Although some of the audience here might be hip enough to know sometimes there's not a dime's worth of difference between the therapist and the patients. But he told one of my college classes, he told them that after 30 years of watching people that had driven themselves crazy in a mental hospital, he said he realized that the best friend you will ever have your whole life is a good book to keep one handy at all times. One of the simplest forms of meditation for people is to read a good book. It's not possible to follow the words in the story and think about your troubles at the same time. And so for at least that few minutes that you're reading, the brain gets an opportunity to put its troubles aside and gets a chance to reboot itself. And in the research, they find that people that do formal meditation get better at it over time, but even simple forms of meditation like reading, taking a walk in the park in the sunshine to get your mind off your troubles can be great. My own particular favorite form, we've talked about this before, is the qi breathing. And that's a particular breathing exercise from Chinese medicine that basically you try to use your full vital capacity. And so 18-year-old levels of vital capacity would be to be able to take a full 20-second inhale as you breathe in and a full 20-second exhale as you breathe out. When I got sick a couple years ago, I had viral pneumonia, bacterial pneumonia, severe asthma attack, and influenza all at the same time, put me in the ICU. Anyway, when I first got out of the hospital and I was on oxygen, that's how you and I met, Constantine, is to get the oxygen concentrator. I could not do, even with the oxygen, I could not do 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. And when I got up to 6 seconds, I felt like I had accomplished something. There was some small measure of improvement, which I'm sure many of the audience knows. If you've got some lung problems, it takes a long time to see improvement, and it can be very discouraging. So the nice part was, even if I only saw a couple seconds worth of improvement, that was encouraging. At this point here, 2 years later after I was sick, I can do a full 20-second inhale and 20-second exhale. I'm still at a point where I can't do that after I run up a full flight of stairs and really exert my lungs. But when I'm just sitting quietly meditating, I can.
So what are some, for the audience, can you explain some generic, so reading a book is a very good point. Can you explain layman's terms for the audience what the popular 2 or 3 forms of meditation is? Meditation doesn't have to be you sit crisscross applesauce and do all that stuff. You know, I've read that you can just be sitting down in a chair in a quiet room. Give us, for our typical patient, somebody who, you know, might find it difficult to crisscross applesauce, what are some other forms of meditation they can do from home?
Well, if you look, most of the form of meditation most people are familiar with is from yoga, since it's so popular. And so like in yoga, you have asanas, which are physical positions that you put yourself in that silence that little voice in your head. So here right now, the audience can't see this, but go ahead, Constantine, go ahead and take your right leg and let me see you pick it up and put it behind your neck.
It's as far as it goes.
He's struggling over here. Now, while you're doing that, let me see you go ahead and think about your troubles. All your troubles disappear, right?
I'm just hoping I don't break my leg, but yes.
And same thing with Tai Chi. The physical movements themselves from the asanas. You have to pay attention to what you're doing. Each movement is different, and so you've got to pay attention in order to stay on track of the next movement and the next movement and the next movement, to where with the long form of the Tai Chi, you've got to pay attention for a whole 20 minutes at a clip in order to get through a whole form. The physical part of meditation, this is what runners do. This is what people refer to as a runner's high, is when you're out doing something physical and not thinking about your troubles. It's where your mind is fully immersed in the activity. Playing badminton can be a meditation. Swimming can be a meditation. These are the athlete's form of meditation. Then there's mantras, which are sounds that you use. to occupy that little voice in your head. For Catholics, it would be saying their rosaries and saying their Hail Marys. And most people think of like chanting Om when you meditate. In Chinese medicine, they wanted to stay away deliberately from any kind of sounds that had religious connotations. And so they stuck to the natural sounds our bodies make. So, for example, for this audience, the healing sound for the lungs is an S sound. To take and breathe in as deep as you can, and as you exhale, to put your tongue against the roof of your mouth and make an S sound. Like a hissing radiator.
Joe, can you explain why that is a very popular method that respiratory therapists use when treating patients?
Well, and with the respiratory therapist, they'll like the mother sound to that, which is the hu sound. They call it the pursed lip sound. In Chinese medicine, sometimes to tonify the son, you tonify the mother. And so to tonify the lungs, you tonify the stomach first. The respiratory therapists, they like the hu sound. They refer to it as pursed lip breathing, which what it does is that sound, by making kind of an O shape with your mouth, it allows you to exhale very quickly and to get the carbon dioxide out. Respiratory therapists like that one because it then increases your oxygen levels quickly. The S sound for the lungs is also very useful, for example, for treating common cold. So when you have a common cold, why does your body make you cough and sneeze? Well, it's trying to get the germs out. If during your meditation you use the S sound, by keeping the tongue against the roof of the mouth like that, it forces you to make a very small opening and let the air out very, very slowly, and so that it allows for a complete emptying of the lungs. And that whole time as you're exhaling, the little hairs or cilia in your lungs and in the respiratory passages help to move up out of your lungs any cold viruses, dust, pollen, anthrax spores, whatever got into your lungs. And so it really helps to clean out the lungs. And then to increase your oxygen levels, the pursed lip breathing or the hu sound sounds like a hoot owl. When you purse your lips and get your lips vibrating, you got the tone just right. And again, that helps to get the carbon dioxide out of your lungs quickly in order to increase the oxygen levels. I also, and you'd find this funny, but when I was really sick and my oxygen levels were really bad, I found one of the best ways to get the carbon dioxide out was when my wife would argue with me. And when we'd start yelling, my oxygen just suddenly started improving dramatically. That's neither here nor there.
Joe, so when you are going about your daily routine, as you've mentioned, a couple of really good tips for our patients. We've got the healing sound. We have Tai Chi or different small forms of meditation. Can you just give us a little bit of an insight in what your daily routine is to try to mitigate or keep the stress levels at a comfortable level? And just so our patients, and we've had a couple ask, just to get an insight in what you, the
well, what
does.
I do, and it's particularly I've been good about it since I was sick 2 years ago, is I'll typically take an hour each morning to meditate while I'm doing my coffee and doing a little stretching and that sort of thing at the same time. And it helps to get my lungs in shape for the day. And also found that it really helps with stress. I had one of my graduate students did a survey of warrior cultures. The Comanche, for example, here in Colorado, and the samurai in Japan, and the martial arts societies, the Zhongwu in China, and to look at, did they meditate for stress after the battle as a stress relieving thing, or did they meditate before the battle? And she found that in every case with these warrior societies, which the ultimate stress is to be in a fight for your life, and she found in every case they would meditate before the battle, not after. And what I found over the last couple of years, particularly over this summer, we were talking before we went on the air, but this summer I got roped into writing 6 NIH grants in 6 weeks. And the only way I survived that was that hour's worth of meditation in the morning. Because, you wake up first thing in the morning, immediately your mind starts running off on all the problems you have to deal with that day, and you're only half awake, in which case most of what you're thinking is crap. And so I found it very useful to sit down and meditate for that hour. And I do the chi breathing. I do a couple of the breathing exercises we've talked about in the podcast before to make sure my lungs are in shape, but also to kind of set my mind for dealing with a stressful day to come. And then if I get the opportunity toward the end of the day, I try to do a little meditation as well in order to get rid of the stress before I got to deal with my wife and my kids and the family. In Chinese medicine, they believe in doing it twice a day like that, at the beginning of a stressful day and also at the end of a stressful day, so you're not carrying that stress home to the family.
If we don't have, let's say, an hour to do it, for a beginner.
What they find is even 5 minutes.
Okay, for beginners.
It doesn't take that long to reset your mind. They find some best effects for stress are at least 15 minutes. And some people need to divide that up in 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there. It's whatever it takes to kind of reboot your mind, so to speak. It's sort of like when you've had a stressful day is sort of like when you have your computer and you have so many windows open and so many documents open and so much stress going on that the whole thing crashes. Sometimes the only way to fix it is to unplug it and plug it back in and reboot it. It helps with stress with the mind to reboot it on a regular basis, in which case you come back to the problem with fresh eyes, and it makes it much easier to deal with whatever stress is coming up.
Perfect. Well, Joe, I think that's a lot of valuable information. Before we hopped on the air, I was asking you about your meditation routine and practices. I myself am someone who deals with the stress, and we know our patients deal with it too, having to deal with heavy tanks or trying to get home for the holidays. And I think it's always an important topic during these winter months. Even for folks who maybe don't have family to go home, it's still a stressful time. Just being around the holidays. And I think keeping our patients in a happy place, practicing mindfulness and some meditation. I think you brought up a lot of good information and tips. And if anybody has any questions or wants to personally reach out to Joe, how can they get a hold of you? How can they be a part of maybe some of your Tai Chi teachings? Okay, sure. and reach out and ask you some questions?
Our website is taichidenver.com, and that's an easy way to get a hold of me. You can always get a hold of me through Oxymed and through Constantine here. I'm happy to answer any questions from people. I do a lot of public education stuff, and I love it when people ask questions. And I don't think people realize how much their doctor likes it when they ask questions. People are afraid to ask questions of their doctor. When you have a question about a health problem, they're happy to answer those questions. That's what they love. They don't like just sitting down and writing a prescription and sending you out the door. And I'm the same way. I love it when I get some feedback from people and get questions from people. So don't be shy about asking questions.
Well, that's going to be it for this podcast, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you guys take this educational information and go practice some meditation and let us know how you feel. Enjoy your holidays. Thank you.